Okay, so this is a prologue which is about Malcolm's youth, and I'll read that. Malcolm, I've called you in to tell you how things are, my guardian began in that voice they all had, full of sizzle like a rattle. His eyes didn't blink, I noticed. I sat in front of him on a bench with a thick cushion and fat legs, my feet not touching the floor. It was his office in the old Audubon Foundling House on the islands of New Orleans. The lit sconces with half shades above our heads were giant fireflies to me. I asked him for help, maybe for strength. Could I be strong? I didn't know. This is the first time Lazarus had ever summoned me. I was only 5 and I was shivering. At dawn, the cook, Mary Lee, had awakened me with news of this meeting, said I needed to get ready. Instead of breakfast, she had made me drink a tumblerful of something foamy and yellow which tasted like chalk. Half an hour later, my stomach exploded, 15 runs to the bucket. She said that got rid of the worms. In the garden, she poured kerosene on my head, then a strange green oil. After, in the sunlight on the banks of the old river, she combed out my knits. Finally, she led me to a room with a large stainless steel tub on a pedestal. It was a shock. I was used to being hosed down. She scrubbed me with stinky pine soap, washed my hair and rinsed it twice, lifted me out in a fluffy towel. She gave me new clothes, which made me very proud, a collarless shirt and thin pants that fell past my knees. She'd sent me down the hall to my guardian's office, my head still wet. Lazarus noticed my teeth chattering. I trust your ablutions were not too taxing. I didn't know how to answer. That Mary Lee was gentle. He leaned back, and the slow, thick features of his padded face closed in. He was round-shouldered, with a big head. His hands were small. I stared at him. I failed to speak. She praised you, said you were one of quite the little stoic, the silent type. He took a very long pause. My friend Ariel told me, you always have to wait when you talk to them. They're slow on purpose to drive us crazy. So to begin, there are 2 kinds in this world, the lucky and the unlucky. The lucky have a trust. If you don't build one, you will have a hard life, and it'll end like... He tried to snap his finger, but he couldn't. The ogre's skin was too slick for that. For some reason, he looked surprised. Do you know what I mean when I say end? Do you know about the unlucky, what happens to them? You were supposed to say the unlucky do the so long goodbye. But the rough boys in the play yard chanted, they dribble down the drain, they suck the black. It was the most dirty, awful thing that could happen. I know was the first phrase I uttered. It will never happen to me. Lazarus was pleased. Now we can dream, the wise man says, but we can't observe eternity. So we shouldn't say never, but we can say not for a very long time, a very long never. I tossed my head, which somehow I knew he'd like. That's the spirit, that's the promise of the reveal, which is so far being kept. We aren't supposed to tell our counts, but I'll do it. I'm approaching 200. Do you realize how long that is? He smiled and showed his bluish teeth. This is all you have to know for now. There are 2 kinds in this world, those who are certain they will not last, and those with wonderful lives. And every reason to hope for eternity. Like me, we're heirs, or for slang, we're treateds, T's. Now, we don't insult the unfortunates by calling them dirty low naturals or gnats or loans. We use their enclave names. Freewheelers, chef Manchurians, port Grammarians, and so on. Why add to their misery with cruel epithets? I didn't know what epithets were. And those with hope, like me, are the treated ones who don't have to do that dirty, awful thing. At least not anytime soon. His laugh was a gush. We prefer to be called heirs. The only difference between gnats and heirs is the trust. To be an heir, you must be treated. And to be treated, you need a trust. Money. It's best to start building one as soon as you can. His face widened. I brought you in to say that you can begin today. The scouts from Celebration Sims have picked you out. You have a role already. That's why we've cleaned you up. A marvelous opportunity. Don't let us down. Just outside footsteps, Lazarus looked up. Come in. When the door opened, a large man was standing there in a pale green cloud of a suit. He was fair-skinned with a black mustache. I wasn't sure if he were an heir or not. I'd only seen a few, but when he came in and squatted down and touched my shoulder, I knew. Malcolm, the stranger said, his voice deep. I'm Jeremy. How are you? He was at my level and a little hilarious. Besides the mustache, two very thick eyebrows made a big M at the top of his face. His dark hair was thick and short. He looked up at Lazarus. Oh my, where do you get these gems? So fresh. Still wet from his bath. Delightful. Look at the bones, a pretty lip. Returning to me, he added, ready for adventure? I nodded yes, though I wasn't sure. You have to speak, he said. Speak, boy, Lazarus commanded. Yes, I said in my normal tone, but I saw they wanted more. Yes, adventure! I was ready to please. Oh my, Jeremy said with a grin that straightened his mustache. Lungs, very useful. Lazarus finally came out in front of his desk and stood quite close to me. I was thrilled to be so near him. He was a sort of father in my dreams, though I knew in truth I was fatherless. He leaned in for a moment and cleared his throat. I was about to get what my mate Ariel called the speech. Now, dear boy, so far you have been very brave, but there's more to endure. At times, the contrast between this place and the world of airs will make you consider your life one of suffering. The things you have to do to add your trust may seem very hard. You'll struggle. But the good news is you will have years, decades, centuries to iron out any wrinkles, unbend any kinks. We have marvelous therapies for you once you're one of us. Intricate, sublime. We have implants, extracts, reprogramming. We even have redescription. Everything that happens out there to you out there can be cured. I've done it. You can too. This is all prologue. This is all just your prologue. Prologue, I eventually decided, meant you weren't supposed to live now, so you could live later when you deserved it. I have it here. Hope it's the right size, Jeremy said, bringing out a thin silver ring with a figure 8 lying on its side in the middle. This is your not yet collar. Some people say niet. It's short for not yet treated. It says you have a chance. So you're ahead of the rabble. He opened the clamp, put it round my neck, closed it again. Then he threw back his head, so I saw his, a black greenish line with a squiggle in the middle, digging into his Adam's apple. See? The same. When you're 20, you get a new one at your boundary time. You dedicate, become confirmed. Then you're on your way, just like me. Lazarus hovered a few inches away. First day on the job. He stepped back so Jeremy could take my hand. As I was marched off, I distinctly remember wanting Lazarus to hug me. And I already knew how wrong it was to want such things. The last time I went to see my guardian, it was my idea, not his. I had worked all my life in The Sims. I was lucky. I had a great trust, and I was getting ready for my boundary time, the first ceremony. But then I received word that my money was in escrow. Someone else had first claim on it, a lien, my money. The wealthy bank would only answer my queries by saying, ask your trust executor. I tried contacting Lazarus over and over, no word, no explanation. I had to go and get an answer. I was living and working on the shore of Zia Pontchartrain then. Soon as I could, I hitched a ride to Audubon Island with a young fisherman named Sirio from Chef Mentor Enclave. He had a single stop to make at Port Gramercy, and then we were headed across to the New Orleans Islands. 8 hours journey, I thought. I stood on the prow as we pulled away from the dock, touching my not yet collar. It was now as tarnished and tight as Jeremy's had been when I first met him. I was planning to get a new one, my last, very soon. There were transgressions I'd confessed then, things I'd promised to give up. In fact, in preparation, I was fasting, toting up my sins. I tried to tell myself I'd get the answers from Lazarus, that all would be put right. I managed till we came to our first stop. There I was thrown into a jail for a single conversation. And almost as soon as they let me go, the men came to kill me. Okay, that's the prologue.